Shalev,
אהלן,
Alon,
מה קורה?
what is up?
מה הולך?
We are talking. We have to talk in English now.
Oh, right. That's my bad. Why I forgot it's in English.
That'll be an amazing start.
I actually had I was in a podcast like a month ago, like for an Israeli one. This is why I was like, oh right, yeah, now it's okay. So it's someone who speaks Hebrew, but it needs to be English, right?
Okay, so we're competing. Then we're competing at the podcast.
No, but probably your yeah, I mean, it's in English. Your crowd is different.
Yeah, it's different. It's different. Man, so we got to chill here a little bit, and I assume that it's gonna happen again because I'm in Israel right now. So I'm super excited because we've been in talking for months now.
Right.
I
Yeah.
feel like.
Yeah.
And
And forth, definitely.
yeah, and what got my eye is kind of your humble nature through your social media. You can only feel a certain bit,
Definitely.
but I felt like your humble nature next to your achievements, and it was just like, whoa, this is the dude I want to meet.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
So I just want to know, first of all, like about you, where you, how you grew up and how you came to what you have right now in the success that you have right now.
Well, basically, so after my service in Israel, in the army, yes, I basically kind of like saved a lot of money for like a year, something like that. And then I moved to LA to study at Musician Institute. I studied the audio engineering program over there. I was thinking about like going to Berkeley, like some of the really big music schools, but I thought like it would probably be more efficient for me to be in the place that I know that I'm gonna want to work in. So like LA was definitely the place where I knew I'm gonna live eventually.
But you were a musician before?
Yes. So I started playing guitar like when I was 10, something like that. And I had like a band in high school. Like I did all of the road to like a musician, like a high school musician.
Yes.
And then when I was in the army, I kind of like put it aside a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, I kind of got more into production, and I learned Cubase, and like I learned a little bit like music theory and piano. I mean, I knew all of that, since I'm playing guitar not for a very long time.
Yeah.
But still, like learning piano and all of that gave me a little bit more knowledge about production. And basically, after I learned production, I realized that I'm very into mixing. Like that's the part where I usually spend most of my hours, when I wrote a track or produced anything. So basically, the guy who taught me this, he was like, "Look, feels like you're really into this, and like if you are trying to make a career out of it, I'll definitely encourage you to find something that is also behind the screen or behind the whatever you want to call it, because it's a little bit more. I don't want to say stable, but it's a little bit more engineering and technical type of work. And first of all, that was my passion, and second, I was like, okay, I actually want to like eventually make a living out of it. So since I'm I don't know, like 17, I knew that I'm probably gonna move to the US because I know the market there is way bigger. So I moved and I studied there for a year. And during my study, I basically got into the internship program. Luckily, I had a professor who told me like, hey, there's a studio called Remote Control Production, which is Hans Zimmer Studios, and it's like very big in LA. And he told me that he can get me an interview there. I was super happy. It was like only 3 months in the school year.
Wow.
Yeah, it was very, very early.
First year?
Yeah, first year. And I kind of had like knowledge before because I studied so much before I moved. So like I knew Logic, I knew Cubase, I knew a lot of stuff. And I was like, I'm actually ready to go. Like if there's any work or something, I'll be happy to do. And this is like what I basically, like went towards to. Like when I was in school and everything, I spoke with professors and I was like, okay, how can I work? How can I don't know, be outside of school and get my, my experience already? And yeah, so he basically was very nice and he told me that he can help me out with an interview. I did the interview, it went well. I started an internship there for like 5 weeks. The internship went great. Like I learned a lot. Definitely, it was, the job itself was like, bringing coffee and, wrapping cables sometimes and prepare like Hans' room and like bring in mail and, all the stuff that an intern needs to do. And after like 5 weeks, I moved to another studio over there. They asked me if I want to like, keep my program going, like still be an intern, but for a studio like next to Hans, which is like in the same building. For a composer named Henry Jackman. And I basically was a little bit more of a runner over there, like which is a little bit, more, how do you say it? It's like above intern. Like, it's basically how you move, move your way up over there. But I was still under the title of an intern, but like I did a little bit more of a work for as a runner, and sometimes even as a tech person, like helping with like building templates and stuff like that. So during all of that time, I had a lot of time actually like be in the rooms with some of the composer and like be, kind of like a fly on the wall, like look what they're doing and sometimes just like even like asking questions and talk to them and like see what they're doing, if they had some time. So that actually helped me a lot to learn a lot of stuff. And after that, I felt that like, I want to maybe change a little bit my direction. So I started to look around and like in different studios, like hip hop and pop studios in a way. And I got into some of them, and some of them I was an intern, some of them were runner, and some of them as an assistant after a certain time. And I recorded like rappers and pop singers. I don't know if I should mention any name, but just name dropping, let's say.
Yeah, you can.
Well, Nick Jonas came one time, which was amazing. He's a crazy musician. Busta Rhymes, Ray J, 2 Chain, Zara Larsson. So like these type of people were around the studio, which was amazing for me, to like, these are people that you usually just watch on TV, whatever, film, YouTube, I don't know. But yeah, so it was a crazy experience to learn that. The job itself, it's funny because like when you do pop and hip hop, there's the production side, which is, crazy work and stuff. But as an engineer, what basically we did was like, just, pull up like one mic and record the singer and, you have the perfect chain for it. And that's it. Like, that's what you do. But after a while, I knew that like my real passion as I started like was for film. So I started to look for an assistant position to be an assistant engineer for a scoring mixing engineer. And it took me very long time. Like I knocked on doors, like I sent emails, like it was basically 8 months me, jobless, basically just trying to look for work. It was very hectic, very hard. But yeah, after these 8 months of me just looking for work, finally I received like a reply from someone that I sent him an email, I don't know, like in a different time, like 6 months, something like that. And he was like, I'm actually looking for an assistant, which was amazing. I met him. He talked to me a little bit. His name was Brad Hale. And he actually like took me a little bit under his wings and kind of like, showed me the scope of the work and everything. And I actually did like an assistant work for him, like preparing the recording for the orchestra and edit sometimes the orchestra, sometimes like pre-mixing, it was like, we recorded like small ensembles. We even recorded like big orchestras, like in the Newman scoring stage and in Warner Brothers, and we did like a lot of really great work. And some of it was like my first experience, and it was for big films like the Lego Ninjago movie, and we did like a short for Hotel Transylvania, and we did like 2 films for Netflix. And we did something for the Minions. I remember, I think it was a TV show or something like that. So that went like for me great to learn like so much on on big scales what the work is actually like, what skills you need and what your level is to be. So for me that was like the main, I think, where I learned the most, definitely. And yeah, after that, I started to work a little bit for Disney as an editor. They hired me as an editor for a couple projects, and after like, I don't know, like 2 projects, they started to like, have a little bit more trust in me. So they asked me, hey, can you help us with like, I don't know, like pre-mixing that? And can you help us with like mixing something here and record something there? So, that I was still like an editor there, but I did like, much more because they had, trusting what I'm doing. And even like for the Galaxy's Edge, the Star Wars land, which we work on the cantina ride or bar, I don't know how to call it, but it's in the park itself. I even like, went to the park itself and like mixed the music in the park, which was an amazing experience because, like basically it was, we were in the park before it opened and we kind of like, looked at everything and experienced everything even before, it was like ready. So like we went to the ride and, I saw how it's set up and the bar is like, replica of the exact cantina, like in the movies. So that was another great project that I did. And since then, basically just work as a freelance, work like for clients and that sometimes write for, I don't know, big streaming services or like music libraries. Really just it varies, but most of my clients are from my experience in different studios and from events that I went. And yeah, that's it. That's what I'm doing till today. Yeah. Very long story.
Yeah, I'd still free to keep on talking all this. Yeah, like that's the point.
Thank you.
Wow, mixing like I really have a feeling like you got to dive into the mixing experience where, like, so you were essentially mixing outside, like, or you were just listening into the sounds. Like, what was the experience? Like, can you just tell me a little bit more
In a specific project or just
in that in that you told me that you went into the
Oh, you mean the park?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it was basically pretty simple. The way that the bar is set up, like you have like a bunch of speakers on on the ceiling, and we kind of like made it sound like it will be balanced no matter where you be in the bar, So we just kind of sit in a, I don't know if to call it like a sweet spot, but like we sit in a not like in a place where it like you can hear everything in the bar, like you are a little bit close to where the DJ is supposed to be, but you're also like sitting in a table where you probably the customer's gonna sit, and we kind of like walked around while we mixed, and we were like, hey, can you raise the bass here? Can you bring down the percussion over there? And like it was like a couple of speakers that we worked with. And yeah, that was like an amazing, experience because it's something super new that I don't think I will ever, have the chance to do because, it's a very specific place. But yeah, it was basically like taking all my skills and try to adapt to like a whole new environment.
Yes.
So for me, it was a new experience, but something that I think like, was very unique. But yeah, it was a cool experience, definitely.
Yeah, it sounds crazy. I mean, like the amount of, and again, it's something that I'm reflecting on you speaking, and the biggest thing that came through was like you climbed the stairs very gradually. You did the work and was willing to go to LA, do the steps that it takes, but then you did the extra bit. What do you think separated you from all the people who went to LA and don't
Right.
really find success?
That's actually a really good question because I think, well, when I tell my story, it's always like, oh my God, everything went so smooth for him, or like everything happened so fast. But to be honest, like, dude, it was crazy hard. Like since I started my first internship, and like most of the days, yes, overall you learn and you see and you meet people and whatever, but at the end of the day, you're just doing like very, very minimal job. Like so when you start, you're not really doing much. Like you're spend a lot of your times there. Like I remember when I was interning for like 2 studios at a time, dude, I was working from like 9 a.m. right until like sometimes 3 a.m. So, like working a lot. Sometimes like I finished, like I finished my shift at the studio at like it's 7 p.m. something like that, and then I went home, like I don't know, just like refreshing myself, resting for an hour or two, and then at the hip hop studio that I worked, like I don't know, one of the clients came around like 11 p.m. or something like that, and then the session went until 4 a.m. or so like it was very very intense, and you're as an intern, you're not even getting paid. So you basically work a lot, you clean a lot, whatever, you do all the dirty stuff, and you bring in coffee, I don't know, bring in lunch, everything basically that.
And you're studying in the same time.
Yeah, you're studying at the same time. Yeah, so all of that was
Holy shit.
crazy for me. But yeah, it was very hectic, and until I got my first, like I always say, like, so while I was interning and sometimes like assisting and whatever, sometimes some of the clients were like, hey man, like here's $100 for like the session or whatever, when you just started, like your title is still like maybe a runner or an intern, but sometimes the engineer is missing or the assistant is missing, and they're like, hey, they know that you're there because you know how to engineer, right? So they're like asking you, like, in 90 minutes, they're like, hey, can you help us like with the session? And then if they want, they pay you. If they not, because you're still on the title of an intern, but you're not doing an intern job, So they kind of like think of like, hey, these guys are intern, I don't need to pay him. But sometimes if it's, a decent person, he's like, this guy actually helped us and worked, I'm definitely going to pay him something. So I was I couldn't really say anything because I was an intern in the title, but I actually worked, So, and it happened a lot in a lot of studios. Because, I mean, the competition is big. So like, you can say, yeah, fuck that. Like, I'm not gonna work because it's like for free, and I've been here for more than a year and whatever. But they probably won't really care because there's a line of people who want to work for them, So you kind of like need to stay in this competition. I don't maybe not a competition, but because it's a very, I don't know, maybe aggressive word for that, but it's a more of like getting in a state of mind of like, I need to be shown and worked hard so people can recognize it, and they will be like, I want this hardworking guy with me, So that definitely was my thought every time. But yes, there were sometimes they were like asking us like really not logical requests, and I said no, because I don't know. I mean, for me, it was like too much.
Yeah.
I don't know, sometimes like receiving a text at 2 a.m. in the group chat that we have with all the interns and the manager, and he's like, hey, we just finished a session. If anyone is up, like, we need someone to tear up all the session. And, it's a bunch of mics, and we need to like zero all the console and the gears and everything. And it's like 2 a.m. And it's sometimes like you see in the group chat, like people are like, yeah, I'll be there. Like, and it's freaking 2 a.m. And like probably people just woke up, saw this text or something, and just were like, oh my God, I need to show up. They called me. Like, I want to show them that I'm working hard. And for me, sometimes I just said, no, I'm sorry, I can't make it, because it's like, it's too crazy. It's too freaking crazy. I'm definitely against all of that shit. I don't think it's a way to really measure someone.
Against what?
Against all that the treatment of like, interns. It's very, it's very common in the US. I don't know about other countries, but it's very common in the US, in California, where I work, at least. And I just felt like it's not right, you have to do it. I did it. I definitely did it. I was definitely in places where I was like, I need to make them happy. I need to work hard and show them, yeah, I was that guy. But after that, I started to understand what is my worth, and asking that, I was like, yeah, no, I mean, I'm starting to say no to all that stuff, because it's just like, I mean, if someone asks you that, and he's like, has this, I don't know, freedom of like asking you that, then you have the full-on freedom to say no, and it's okay. Like, if you'll think that you're lazy or something, or that you don't want to work in this industry and all that, it's it's just like it's out of like the reality, man. I can see it's out of it doesn't even, I don't know how to say in English, but like, it's not logical in any way to say that or think about that, you know, because like you can work as hard as anyone, but sometimes just even getting something like minimum, that's freaking, you know, that will make the whole difference. When I started to work for Brad, dude, like the minute that I got in, it was like, whatever I have, I'm gonna pay for the time. It doesn't matter. Sometimes if we even don't have work for the studio like this week or whatever, like you're here, you're spending your time here, learning whatever I need you to learn, I want to pay you. Man. And I was like, oh my God, like for me, it was a shock, man. You know, like meeting someone like that after so many people that I met, that it was like very obvious for them that you work for free. Dude, it was insane, like for me to meet someone like that. So you know, as I'll go back to my point.
Yeah,
it sounds like very like, you know, wow, you managed to do all those projects, but dude, like it took me years to work for free. Sometimes even like not working at all, and like we're looking for work.
Yeah,
And just living out of my savings. That's like was most of my life, you know, over there. And then when you get like projects, then it's like you feel like a little bit on the you know on the roll, like, oh, I got this, now I have this, and you know, because you have this attitude of like, I'm a professional, this is what I do, my time is worth. You show this, your attitude, your energy is like that. People get it, people respect that, and that's the, you know, that's the treatment you want to receive.
yeah.
So yeah.
So if let's say someone's listening to this right now and they're in college, even though most of the people listening to this are more advanced stages, but if you were to want to intern now, like let's say you were again after the army, you were doing your thing. It sounds like one piece of advice is come in with savings.
Yeah.
That's a good
100%.
that's a good one.
Caught that one. Yeah.
Yeah. But what's another piece of advice you would give? Because again, like something that I thought about as you were speaking about it, which is it's a bit controversial, but I mean, like that's essentially what Me Too was, right? Like a bunch of people trying to make it in industries that are dogfights. Like you can say that it's not competition. I'll say 100% it is competition in my opinion, and it's a dogfight. And people are like, okay, you don't want to do this, then okay, I'll just move on to the next one. And then basically this girl's chance in the acting world is just like out of the window.
Right.
So what would you suggest if you were that boy again? Like what advice would you give him then?
Well,
now?
I definitely, you know, some of the things that, you know, like people, when they approach me, they're asking me, or even like people from, you know, from my country, from Israel, that want to move and asking for advices. I definitely have a couple for them. Like, so first, as you mentioned, like saving, just come with saving as much as you can. Definitely. That's first. Second, I will always encourage people to actually go to like boutique studios and not the big ones. And, you know, work for like with team of like 3 people, you know, like a small studio that has a lot of work, but you know, their team is like starting to grow.
Yeah.
And actually like work with these people and see if you have any work, because you'll move up faster, and you'll probably will get paid faster, and you'll learn much more because there are not a lot of people. Like it's just a lot of advantages. So and for me, when I worked with Brad, it was only me and him, sometimes like 2 more people or maybe 1. And this is where I was like, I felt like my time is worth. I felt like I'm learning a lot because I'm basically the only student over there. Like so many advantages. And for me, I was like, wow, why didn't, you know, thought about it like before, you know? So that's definitely another thing. The third thing is definitely, you know, at the end of the day, being in those big studios and like, you know, earning credits and all that stuff, it's something that will definitely help your career. So like for me, it's only always nice to say that, like, yeah, I was in remote control production, you know, I was in one of the biggest studios in LA, you know, it's always nice to say that, you know, even with you now with the podcast, it's like I have an experience of doing that, you know, something that is very big. So it's not that I'm saying like, you know, past that or something, but just like, you know, when to say stop to that, you know? Like I met people that were interns or runners for many, many years. You know, one of the runners that I met there was like five years a runner. And he was just waiting for a job to be open for him in the studio. And he thought like, if I'll stay a runner, everybody will get used to me. once there will be an opening, I'm sure I will be the first one that they will, offer this because I'm here for 5 years. And no, it didn't happen for him, and eventually he just quit and like moved to another job or something. And that's the thing. Like I'm saying, like, as much as I can say that I'm against it or something like this, and I will never, I will never, how do you say it? Like, I don't know, and like I will never agree with that attitude. It's still the biggest thing. Like in the US, still everyone doing it. Like you have to do it. Like you have to go through it because this is how it is over there. So definitely try and go and do that, but like just know when to stop. Like see these, I don't know, feel the energy, feel the people, see if they're actually thinking of you as like somebody who actually wants to work there, and not just someone who's like helping them with their lunches, like see how they treat you. See if they're asking you like, hey man, you wanna hear something, you wanna see this, you wanna sit next to me and see how I work or something like that. Like see if they actually want you to join their team, or they're like, oh, this is just another intern, 5 weeks, I won't see him anymore. So that's another good tip.
That's huge because your surrounding is everything, right? We talked about it before we got on, and he spoke about the importance of like going away sometimes from what you're surrounded by in order to actually receive the attention you want. Because sometimes, like for me, when I traveled the world, every place I would go, I would be seen as a new person, right? And then I can invent the new person that I want the people to see me as.
Yes.
And only 2.5 years ago when I went to Bali, I was able to portray a person that I wanted people to see me as.
Right.
And that's what kept me there. And I feel like what you are speaking to is so close to that in a sense, because you are in a studio for 5 years. And I mean, the definition of craziness is doing one thing as many times and expecting a different outcome. And if you see that people are treating you the same after a bunch of time that you're somewhere, and it's not a way that you like or that you want to be treated as or seen as, then what are you doing there?
Exactly. Like what are you actually gaining from that place, man?
Yeah.
It's like, that's the thing. Not a lot of people see it because they're like really, they're.
But did you think about it consciously? Like, were you consciously thinking about, do they see me like I want to be seen? Like, how did it go for you, man? Because it's a lonely road.
Yeah.
And LA is a lonely place, man.
Yeah. There's, I mean, definitely in this perspective of like this specific profession in the music industry, it's definitely something. When I was there, I don't think I really saw it, but it didn't took me much time, I think, because I felt like, first of all, I can't say it like, in the majority of it, but from what I experienced, usually I was a little bit older than the other people, and of course I came after the service.
Yeah.
And and in the army, you have so much like weird and like shitty experience sometime, and like nothing really surprised me. So I felt like, okay, like I'm a grown up now, right? And I at the end of the day, I actually want to move forward because like I have, I thought about like where I want to be, how I want to work with, like who I want to work with, and of course, at the bottom line, I have bills to pay.
Yep.
So I thought about all of that, and I was like, okay, how can I get there faster? Or I don't know, in a more efficient way, right? Because yes, I can do all of the intern work and whatever and everything else, and I know I can do that. I know how to handle people like lunch or whatever, coffee, like you name it. The people, people always say like they want to see how how attention to details you have. Like how do you bring me the lunch? How do you make me the coffee? How do you like, I don't know, help me with like wrapping cables? Did you wrap them like this, like that, whatever? How did you? All of that, which I can get. Like, as an engineer, you need to be organized.
Yeah.
But dude, like if you see my computer, like you saw my computer, like I have 4 folders in my desktop, like because everything is like in these folders, and everything is like extremely organized. I was like that. I didn't need it to be and it's like an intern or a runner or whatever, and to do other stuff to show people that I'm organized. I knew that I'm already organized, so I was like, okay, I know what I have. I know what my skills are. Of course, there's a lot of stuff I need to to learn, but I think my open position needs to be a little bit more than just like bringing people lunch, you know? So this is what I looked after, after a couple of weeks sometimes, I was like, okay, like I'm gonna just go and ask. Like sometimes I went to people. I remember when I was at remote control, his score mixing engineer is Alan Marison, right? And he's one of the biggest scoring mixing engineer in the world. And I remember I don't know how long after, but like couple weeks after I went to his studios, I knocked on his studio, on his door, and I was like, hey, do you have like a couple minutes and just have a quick question? And, it was like, yes, you can come in. And I just asked him like straight up. I was like, so what is the best way for me to get into a point when I'm your assistant? Like, I want to be your assistant. How can I do it? And that was like only after a couple of weeks in the studio, right?
Yeah.
And because I remember I was asking around, nobody could tell me like, how do you get to manage to be his assistant, right? Nobody really know. And I just asked him, and he was in shock, right? Because nobody, like no intern ever, I think, did that to him, right? But I was like, I know what I want. Why would I just ask him? He's a person like me. Why not?
Yep.
I asked him, and he was in shock. But he was like, I like that you came like to me, like exactly. That's why, exactly. And he was like, so I have this girl, and she helped me with like when I need assistance and stuff like that. So maybe once you're ready or whatever, just get her information, and that's what I did. And this is basically what I did for like every freaking, I don't know, job that I had since then. I was like, okay, I need to go and like actually like, ask what I want. And, there's a bunch of ways to like get a gig at a studio or whatever. And, it's like sending emails and I don't know, calls sometimes. At the end of the day, I felt like I'm doing it a lot, and I was like, okay, I need something a little bit more extreme, whatever, like to stand out. So I had like every month, I had like a GPS, like a Google map route from studio to studio, and I just drove once a month to like all of these studios and just like brought them a hard copy of my studio. I was like, hey, I don't know if you remember from last month, I know you probably get like a lot of resumes. I wanted to give you one more time my hard copy. Sometimes studios were very mad, and they were like, "Okay, man, like we don't need you to come anymore and like bring us, the resume." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, I don't care. It's not personal, whatever."
Yeah.
And some studios loved it. That I came every freaking month and like gave them my hard copy. Like I did all of the, all the way to them to actually give it to them. And yeah, at the end of it, this is how I got my job with Brad, which was like the biggest work that I had as an assistant, right? And I just went to him. I put my resume in his mailbox and just did it until, until he was there. And I knocked on his door, and one day he was like, "Oh, I remember your resume. I remember you put it like, and he was in the studio, and and actually I sent him an email. He invited me, and it was great, And for me, like, that's the way. Like, you need to stand out and ask for what you want. Like, go to the person you want to work for or you want to work with, and ask them, like, hey, man, I really want to work with you, Like, yeah, yes, of course, you can go around and, like, try and be, like, whatever this guy wants you to be and, like, show him the best skills you have and that that he needs.
Yeah.
But if you just approach and ask, like, dude, it's always good. Why not,
It shows personality. And it shows, again, like grit. And again, like the word chutzpah.
Yeah,
it's a Jewish word.
Exactly.
And it's a very old word, and people use it to people who don't know. People use it for like grit, for like that extra, like, oh, you got that extra layer of something. Like you have this roughness in you, which is what I feel like coming out of the army also gave me. It's just a little bit of edge over people who have just finished getting drunk with their homies in the dorm room and in the college.
Yeah.
And I could feel, I used to live in Austin, Texas, in college dormitories.
Really? Okay.
It was really funny because again, people were 2 years younger than me, but they were acting like I acted when I was 17.
Right.
And I feel like the other piece of advice that I got from it is just like do your homework before you go and know what you want. Again, like know how you want to be presented.
Yeah.
But also know the time is ticking. Like there's no if you know what you want and you don't ask for it, you're in a problem. There's a book by Amanda Palmer,
Okay.
called The Art of Asking.
Really? Okay. Sounds like exactly what he spoke about, right?
Such a beautiful book. It basically shows how she got her. I think to date, it's the biggest Kickstarter campaign that was made. Yeah, she did a pre-launch of like $1 million. She raised $1 million for her album, and that's where she got, right. Like that's where you are today. But that's she was talking about how it started for her, and for her it was street performing.
Okay.
So she started as a street performer.
Right.
She was a statue,
Yeah.
and she was talking about how she would communicate with people through the eyes and ask them every time.
Wow.
And that was
Big.
like the way that she got that role. And she understood that when she asks, people are more likely to comply. And
that's an interesting perspective about that.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
But I mean, it's very similar to you.
Yes.
It's like you go and in the most direct way, you're like, I want to succeed in this world. My next step is to work with you.
Yeah.
How do I do this?
Exactly.
And that's something actually, like, it's funny, but that's something I always feared doing. I felt, I think it's where imposter syndrome can kick in, right? Like where people gonna go like, and then like everything is messed up.
True. Yeah, you also need to feel like, I mean, before you approach someone, you need to think if you're actually ready to work with him, and see what he did before, and see like maybe what he works with, like what, I don't know, let's say from my experience, it's like what DAW he works with, like how his studio is like, and like, all this technical stuff.
Do your homework.
Exactly. Do your homework and like, and see exactly if he'll say yes. Let's say he's saying yes, like right now, would I be able to provide? That's the thing. That's super important.
Ooh, yes, that's a huge one.
Exactly. Because people say always in the industry, first of all, say yes, then you'll figure it out, right? And I said, okay, I get it. It's very smart to do that. But at the end of the day, if you're saying yes and you're very far from what he needs, then you're probably gonna mess up. And
you're not in your prime. You're not in your prime. You're not in your element. It's just like there are things, but in these things that just say yes and then react is just like, it doesn't, in my head, it doesn't make sense. Yes, when you want to actually capitalize on something.
Exactly. So
I mean, you'll have enough challenges doing that. Like you'll have enough challenges working for that.
Oh yeah, 100%. Even if you know the job, like when you're actually ready, you still have a lot of like challenges. So that's something that I was. Sometimes I learned in the hard way. I was listening to a lot of people that with more experience, and they told me first of all say yes, and I sometimes said yes on stuff that I was like, okay, I'll figure it out. And sometimes it works, sometimes it's not, and I was like, okay, I'll just need to actually be ready on like before I approach to someone, I definitely need to be like 100% ready for me, because I know I'm going to have challenges, as you said, like either way,
Yeah.
So that's something that I felt like I really need to be like professionally, right? Because there's like this saying of like, you need 2 out of these 3 things in the music industry. Like you either need to be professional, make it on time, and be a good hang, right? So if you have 2 out of these 3, you probably will manage.
Again, make it on time.
So make it on time, be professional, and be a good hang. Yes, because that's what people like usually want from you when you're in the music industry. Like you need 2 out of these 3. Like let's say you're making it on time and you're a really good hang, but you're not very professional. People will still want you in the studio because you're a freaking good hang, and they like to hang with you, and they like their energy you bring to the studio, right? So these are great 2 things, right? And even professional, make it on time. Maybe you won't be such a, I don't know, call it good hang, but maybe you're not a very, extrovert person and like speaking and like, make funny comments or whatever, but you'll be very, very professional and make it on time. That sometimes is more than enough for people. And this is what they're actually looking for. So it's like, it's always a combination of two.
Yeah.
If you think about it.
Shit, man. I mean, like, I think we're getting close to your time.
Oh, right. Yes, sir.
But,
Heard the sound, right?
Yeah, we heard the bell. And I do want to. There are so many things that I know with you about it. We'll have to run it back because I want to speak with you because you do so much mixing for Sync and so much mixing for media, movies, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
I would love to actually go in and talk to you about that. So that's what we'll do next time.
Yes.
We will schedule this, and so I'll do it online probably.
Yep.
But what's a last piece of advice? Oh, you know what? I want to ask you actually. What's next for you?
Oh,
first of all.
Okay. Well, I think what next for me is like to basically, I want to say continue what I'm doing, but like I always try myself. So like work on a bigger project and, work with more clients that has like this, passion to music like I am. But I think what's next for me is definitely, just like work on the projects that I want to work on, and actually be able to get them in like, I don't know, a specific project or a specific studio that I want to work with. And I think that's what, I wish for me. And I think that's what, I don't know, next for me, like to just keep what I'm doing, but in a bigger scale. That's what I think. That's if sum it to one sentence, that's definitely it. Yeah.
Do what you do on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's leave it at that. How can people find you?
Well, Instagram is a great way.
Yeah.
At Shalev Alone Mixing. That's and Facebook Shalev Alone or LinkedIn Shalev Alone. Yeah, those are the best way. Of course, email and everything is all there, but yeah, usually those platforms are great. 100%.
Man, thank you so much for doing this.
Dude, thank you, man. Thank you. Really, it's so much fun.
Crazy.